It grieves me a great deal when people call the police because they feel like, well, who else can you call? What else can you do? And that can exacerbate things and make them worse, unfortunately.
In part 2 of Black, Autistic, and Safe, we told you how Stefan Watt's family lobbied the state of Illinois to adopt a new law called SESA after police shot and killed Watts when he was having a mental health crisis in his home. Watts was only 15 years old, Black, and autistic. The new law, also bearing his name, prohibits police officers from responding to mental health or medical emergencies.
Really, what I do, I'm just going to be honest with you, I pray. That's what I pray a lot.
Dr. Morenike Jiwa Anaiwu is a Black woman diagnosed with autism who works with the nonprofit organization Advocacy Without Borders. She says although some states or cities have similar legislation, it's not on a national scale. The National Council of State Legislators reports that since September 2019, at least 13 states have Medicaid-funded mobile crisis teams. But Spectrum News reports laws on the books requiring police to have training to ensure that autistic people are safe when they encounter an officer is not a national standard. So Giwa Anaiwu takes extra precautions to keep herself safe. She has 5 children, ages 20, 19, 18, 14, and 12. One of her adult sons has low support autism or Asperger's. She says she often role plays with him, telling him, if approached by an officer, to refrain from showing any behaviors that might make the officer nervous.
Or try to explain what you're doing, or ask if you can have a moment, like try to talk through, even if this seems ridiculous to you, like, sir, I'm really upset. I just need to move for a moment, or I need a moment before I can speak, please. Or I repeat things when I'm nervous, because you don't use echolalia. They're not going to understand what you mean by that. All these terms that we that are second nature to us. It's not to everyone else. Or sometimes, like people talk about having the little thing that you pull out of your wallet. I'm thinking, please don't pull anything out of your wallet, your pocket. You're gonna get shot.
She recalls how police encounters don't always have to be bad ones.
I have a negative and a positive one. I if it's okay, I'll try to be brief and I'll share both because I feel like there are a lot of negative stories and they're real, but I just want to also share a time that a police officer was very helpful. So my younger children did a lot of wandering. And so we had, like locks on the doors and you had baby gates and you had alarms, but sometimes they aren't fast. And so there was an incident where my daughter learned how to unstrap herself out of the stroller and disappeared. She was literally, I'm literally pushing her, but the reason I didn't feel her get up is because I also had a baby bag hanging on the back of the stroller, so that gave it weight. Otherwise I could have felt the weight, the difference, And so she got up, she disappeared. We're at church, it's right next to a major freeway. I'm freaking out. She doesn't really answer to her name or anything like that at this time. And I'm in tears, like trying to figure out what's going on, looking all around, frantic. And there happened to be a man he was off. He wasn't even working. It was his off day, but he was a police officer. And so when he noticed my distress, he asked what was going on, asked for a picture of my daughter because the rest of us were frantic and running around and not probably doing the right thing. I guess maybe with his training, he had ideas of certain places where to look. He found her for me. This was a white police officer as well. Found my daughter, came in holding her. Might as well have been Superman as far as I was concerned. Like I was so teary-eyed and overwhelmed and grateful, and thanking him for it. And he was, and she wasn't scared, so however he had gotten her to come to him, however he approached her in a way that didn't set her off or make her frightened, it was just a huge blessing. And he did this with not seeking any recognition or reward or anything. I didn't even get a chance to get his name to thank him, when this happened. And so that was a wonderful experience. But then I've also had an experience where I was driving, and I guess I've learned, it's very funny. I used to speed, and I've learned that they can also stop you for driving too slowly because they think something's suspicious about that. So I was just tired, you know what I mean? But so I was stopped, and the person, started asking me questions. And when I'm nervous, or when I'm trying to focus or concentrate, I engage in echolalia. I might not even know that I'm doing it. And so because unfortunately I'm an adult, he thought I was mocking him. So he said something like, where are you going, ma'am? And I was like, where are you going, ma'am? And I didn't say it to be mean. I mean, I said it even in the same twang that he said it, but that's just how I process. I couldn't figure out how to say it in my head. And he was like, what's your name? And I like paused for a second because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to repeat. I don't want to say what's your name again, because then he'll think I'm being rude. So I'm stopping myself from talking. So now I'm not answering. So that he finds that weird. I'm not making eye contact. He finds that shifty. And so he tells me to get out of the car. And I get out and I have a stimming device, like like it's like a little wire coily thing that I use. And I have it in my hands. And so I'm using it to calm myself down so I can try to address him,
Focus.
make eye contact. And he draws for his weapon. He's like, what is that? Because it's shiny and it's metallic. I mean, I guess it could have been some kind of slingshot or knife. And I'm trying to explain it's a stimming device. He's like, what is that? He doesn't know what that is. Could be, is that the name of a drug? Like what? And so it took, fortunately for me, like I think he saw the fear in my eyes, and I kind of froze. But I also was flapping a little with my arms, which could have made him think, is she trying to strike out at me? So I was fortunate in that, he allowed me, I think he noticed that something wasn't right or it was different. And he allowed me to explain that this is something that I use to help, focus or calm myself down. It is not a weapon. It's actually a toy. Look, it's harmless, but what if I hadn't been able to form speech properly? What if I had burst into tears? Or what if I continued to use echolalia? What if I had gotten scared and tried to drive off and pass him up? Like anything could have happened. It's just, it's frightening. And he wasn't trying to be, cruel or mean or discriminatory. He just didn't know what was happening. And as far as he was concerned, it was unknown, therefore potentially a threat.
Lola Dada Ali is a legal advocate and also runs the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast. She and her husband Tosan spoke to me about caring for Lola's 37-year-old brother Kunle Dada, who has autism with high support needs. They also have 2 children on the spectrum. Their 12-year-old son has Asperger's, and their 10-year-old daughter has autism with high support needs.
I don't think we've quite figured out how to approach it with baby girl, but with our son, it's evolved from the traditional be respectful, put your hands where they can see them, no sudden moves. Actually, quite frankly, evolved to a simple statement of survive the encounter. No matter what it takes, survive the encounter, let them take you to jail or whatever it is, but survive that encounter, then hopefully, if you can, because then we now have options.
And as a kid who is on the spectrum and doesn't always understand nuance, we've given him examples of how perhaps someone can say one thing but doing another thing. So some of these conversations have involved looking at body actions and how they can be separate from vocal prompts, vocal commands. And knowing the difference, and along all the previous things my husband just said, but also that importance of, and that what you were alluding to earlier about, yes, he's Black, but he's also autistic. And the nuance, he's a highly logical child.
Very black and white.
Very black and white. That's another thing we have to talk to him about often, because I've told Tosan about this dream. I haven't told our son, but I had a dream that the adult version of him was stopped by the police, and I could see him being the type of young man to say, wait, according to criminal code section 5, so why are you stopping me? And I just think about how that could go south with the wrong officer.
Yep.
So we have those type of discussions, and they're not easy ones, not at all. But we hopefully have these series of conversations in hopes that over time it will click, hoping that actual encounter will never happen, but hoping that it clicks nonetheless, just in case.
And I didn't mean to laugh, but it just reminds me of some things that my son would do. And just that you want to hug them because they're not thinking in terms of trying to be smart. They're just being smart, but they're not being
smart.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
They're so logical, and And it's interesting because in a school setting, at least if it's the right school customized for your kid, that's praised. But out in the world, that's not always praised. And that's another conversation, is environment.
Especially if it's coming from, quite frankly, a Black male.
Black parent Jane Broby says she's leery of her 21-year-old son learning to drive because he communicates with a tablet. She fears police wouldn't understand he doesn't speak. She also says her son reads novels for fun.
So I don't think about that too much. The only time I think about it is, what if I was in a car accident and I was driving?
Have you prepared him in terms of like having a card or anything on him or something?
Well, we did. The ABA people asked me to take pictures of his ID, and then I also took a picture of my mom's phone number, my dad's phone number, my brother's phone number. I'm nonverbal. I can type stuff.
Many of the parents who spoke to me about taking precautions were extremely concerned about their Black sons. In 2020, the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health reported that Black Americans are about 3 times more likely than white Americans to be killed by police. And when you're an autistic American, the statistics around a violent police encounter go up. In 2017, The Guardian reported 1 in 5 people killed by law enforcement in 2016 either had a mental health disability or were having a mental health crisis when they were killed. Although the reporting didn't specify if Black men were stopped more by officers, many parents have more concerns when it comes to Black men.
Some of the officers are good, some are bad, but...
Despite the statistics, Jabbar Hassan, who is a Black man with autism, says he feels okay when it comes to encountering police officers. His older cousin, Daryl Price, who is his caregiver, says he still has concerns.
One thing I do commend him, every time he sees a police officer, any type of military person, he always says thank you for your service to both the police officer and the military people.
Don't forget firefighters too.
Yeah.
And paramedic people.
And so he shows himself friendly to that group. We were going to get him a bracelet that says that he has autism. That way, if he does encounter a situation where he's dealing with a police officer, at least the police officer can have a heads up, of what he's dealing with.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to support getting Americans the help that they need. More than 1 in 5 911 calls involve mental health or substance use crises. That amounts to millions of calls per year.
Next week on Black Autistic and Safe Extended Part 4, we hear from one lawmaker who introduced national legislation to address how police agencies respond to mental health crises in this country. I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network.